Hi folks, how we all doing today? So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we approach a roast. And what I mean by that is you've got a new bean, you just got it in the mail, your local supplier gave it to you or what have you, and you don't know really how you want to roast it. And so what I want to talk about is what I do when I'm trying to figure out, how I want to roast the coffee. So the coffee in question today is Cafe Kreyol's. And this is Organic Ramirez Estate, Red Honey, Jarabacoa, Dominican Republic, Red Caturra, 1400 meters. So this is the label here. And if it seems like I'm doing two things at once, it's because I'm doing two things at once. I'm recording a YouTube video and I'm Instagram Live. I don't know how it's going to work out, but we're going to do it because we only have one of us. So anyways, back to what we're talking about. The Cafe Kreyol. This is a red honey processed Caturra. So this is a Arabica coffee. This has been done as a natural process, and what we mean by that is that instead of using a lot of water to wash the coffee, what they've done is they've actually let the fruit dry naturally, crushed it, and then used like a mechanical way to separate it, usually like a broom. And just some handwork. And what that does, it separates out the fruit from the seed. So what does that mean to us as roasters? Well, it means that there's going to be some stuff on the outside of it, little bits of fruit, basically. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that you're going to get a little bit of that flavor as you roast. You can burn it completely away if you want to. If you don't like it, you can completely remove it. If it is something that you want, you can retain it, and you do that by low early heat. So as you're roasting early in the roast, you don't want to crank your heat up really high. You're going to burn that sugar off the exterior. And it's fruit pulp, fruit juice, like any other kind of juice you can imagine. Well, the main thing about it that I find with any natural coffee is that it tends to progress from yellow to the pop really fast. And so in other words, as soon as I get to yellow, about 300 degrees, I've got to really control my heat well. Otherwise, I'm going to rush right into the pop, and I want to avoid doing that. So that's really the big difference. The other big difference is that it's going to start giving me a smell like an end of roast smell. And so if you guys are roasting without a temperature gauge of any kind, you're going to be going off of smells. And as soon as you start to do any kind of a natural process coffee, as soon as you get up to about 250 degrees, you're going to start smelling what I would call an end of roast smell, meaning that you're going to smell coffee, you're going to get a little bit of smoke, you may smell a little bit of fruit smell, whatever it may be. And it can really fool you, to the point where you're going to dump out a roast thinking you're done and you're at 300 degrees. And why that's happening is just because you're burning off that fruit and that sugar that's on the exterior of the coffee. So ignore that smell and just carry on, basically. Now, that's one thing. That's one way that we figured out what we're going to do. So we know it's an Arabica coffee. We know that we want to have, fairly early, low heat early on so that we can retain that sugar smell. Now, the other thing that we're going to look at is what's the altitude. So this is grown at 1,400 meters. Anyways, 1,400 meters, what's that? It's 4,600 feet about that it's grown at, which isn't particularly high, which tells me that the bean density in these beans isn't going to be a lot. It's not going to be a very hard bean. And what does that tell us? That means that I can't put a lot of early heat on it because I could damage it. It also is a reason why that bean is going to want to rush from yellow to the pop is because it's not very dense. There's not a lot in it. When you get a really dense bean, like an African bean or some of the Colombian beans where they're grown at really, really high altitudes, you have to keep the power up on them a lot because you just can't get the heat into the bean. It's a lot harder to do. And so with a soft bean, you don't have to worry about that so much. So I'm going to go ahead and do a regular 150 gram roast. And then we're going to look at the coffee and we're going to kind of gauge our experience and see how we think it went. And if we think that we need to make a bunch of changes to it, we can always do that, Another thing that I'm going to consider with this coffee in this process is that I am going to smell it green. And the reason for doing that is that some of the natural processed coffees wind up being very fermented. That's part of with a honey processed coffee, if I understand it correctly, they basically put the coffee into a vat and they mash it up and they add some water and they let it ferment. Coffees that are very, very fermented, I don't particularly like. Now, this is just me. It's not like there's anything wrong with them. It's just my take on it. I don't like the barrel aged coffee all that well. And I don't really like the fermented natural coffees if you save the natural flavor. So if I were to get this coffee and open up the bag and it smells like an old brewery, I'm going to consider a little bit higher early heat to actually get rid of that flavor. Now, this does not have that. This has a really fruity smell to it. A little fermented, but not much at all. And so I like it. I like what I'm smelling. And so I'm going to try to retain it. And I'm going to do that by, again, low early heat. So let's get this baby going. It's empty. It's clean. So we're going to go with, we're going to light. There we go. We're going to go with medium. And we're just going to monitor the temperature. Now, I don't have a clock to show you guys. I'm going to be looking at the clock on my computer to figure out how long this is taking. And hopefully that'll work. But you guys can see the temperature. You guys can't, or can you? Oh, you just barely can, but it's backwards. Let's get on with it, folks. So right now we are at 1 minute. I'm at 122 degrees. I started out at 75 degrees. So I'm just, 37 degrees ready to rise. Is that right? 37? Yeah. And so my guess is my next minute is going to be just a little bit faster than that. So, okay, there's 2 minutes, 191 degrees. So yeah, so we went 70 degrees second minute. That's pretty fast. I'm going to lower my heat down slightly because, again, I'm trying to retain this fruit flavor. And kind of the way I do this is that I try to do the first roast that I do of any bean, I'm more than likely going to do it as slowly as I can with a really long development. Because the idea being that that's going to kind of give it the best chance, right? It's going to be the most likely to be, how do I put it? Well, it's going to give it the best chance. I mean, any coffee that you roast, if you roast it for, 12, 13 minutes and you've got like a 20 to 25% development, you're more than likely going to have a pretty good, smooth cup of coffee. Now, when you taste that and you taste like, say you taste a little bit of fruit flavor, well, then you're like, okay, I want to speed this up and I want to exploit that. I want to save my acid, so I'm going to speed the roast up a lot, to be able to get that high acidity out of it. So I just went another minute. Now I'm down to 60 degrees ready to rise on my third minute, which is pretty cool because that's going to equal out as I get hotter and hotter and hotter and I get closer to the pop. I'm going to probably run into the pop at about 20 degrees a minute based on, my temperature right now. And you guys will hear me harp on the time to yellow and figure out your time to yellow. How long does it take to get to yellow? 300 degrees, end of dry. The reason for that is because it gives you the opportunity to be able to adjust your speed before you killed your roast. If you get all the way to where it's going to pop and you realize you're at 30 degrees ready to rise at 390 degrees, you're never going to develop that coffee. It's just not going to happen because you can't slow it down fast enough. At 300 degrees, I've still got 75, 80 degrees to go before I even have to worry about the pop, which means I can adjust gently. I can slow my speed down. Okay, so I got to 300 degrees in 5 minutes. So that's a little fast. So I know I'm interrupting myself, and I'm sorry, but anyhow, I got to 300 degrees in about 5 minutes and some seconds. So that's a little faster than my classic slow roast, which would be 6 minutes to yellow, but it's well within bounds. And one of the things I'm looking for as I'm roasting is I'm trying to figure out, do I have any burning smell? Do I smell burning sugar especially? Or do I smell a bunch of end of roast smells early in the roast? And what that would tell me is that I'm burning away the sugar on the exterior of the coffee, and I haven't done that at all. And so I'm feeling pretty good about this roast so far. I don't see any problems with it. So there, that's what I'm talking about. I got 340 degrees, and I've got a lot of smoke coming out of the roaster as though I'm in the pop, and I know I'm not. but it's tricking me. It's making me worry. I'm like, oh my God, are the beans turning brown at this point? Like, because I'm seeing signs that I'm actually starting to brown the coffee, but really what's happening is I'm burning off a little bit of that sugar. Still makes a guy nervous though when you see it. And you'll see I'm not looking in here with the flashlight. If I was roasting without a probe, I'd be looking with a flashlight in my coffee right now, making really sure that I was, that the color matched where I think I am basically. So I'm at what, 366, 7, 8, 9. It's a little slow, considering I'm not even at the pop yet. So what I did is I just increased the heat just slightly. I'm at 380 degrees. I am going to start popping here momentarily. Let's turn the heat down just a little bit. It's quiet. Some beans pop really loud and other beans do not. See, I don't like how fast I am right now. See how quickly how fast my rate of rise is for being in where I consider it to be in the pop, even though I don't hear it. I'm in my development period, and so I want to slow down. My goal here is to try to be about 415. See, there's some audible. All right, 402. And so now that I've turned my heat down, what I'm trying to do is I'm basically stalling the roast, and then I'm going to increase the speed a little bit after just a minute, but I want to get completely stopped and kind of figure out where I am. I mean, I may get lucky and have hit at the right spot, but a lot of times after you turn down your heat, you may need to adjust it just slightly to keep it going. And you see, I'm still at 403 degrees, so I basically stalled it. 404, I'm not touching it now, because now I've got just like the lowest rate of rise possible, and what I don't want to do now is adjust it, because I'm going to I'm going to have to. Let's see if we can concentrate it. I'm just bouncing on that 303 to 304 degrees. Let's see if we can keep that raised, because we always want to have a positive rate of rise, right? You want a steadily declining rate of rise, but you always want it to be positive if possible out of it. So there's 405. We're still moving forward. We're at 11 minutes. And so right when the beans start to pop, they let off all this steam, right? And so the steam's disappearing. The beans are actually losing part of their mass, because part of their mass is water. And so what happens is they don't want to take on heat anymore, because they're actually giving off heat. And then you don't have that moisture anymore. Now it's dry, and now they want to speed up. And so you guys have, I'm sure everybody who's ever read anything about roasting, you've all heard about the crash and the flick. And, a lot of people spend a lot of effort to try to avoid that. And for good reason. I mean, you do want to not have this huge crash and a huge flick at the end. But in a natural progression with the roaster, in other words, if you never changed your heat, you would always see a crash and a flick, because as the beans go exothermic, they give off the steam, your rate of rise is going to drop. As the steam disappears, now the beans are dry, they're going to start to pick up speed again. And so you're always going to see that. And on commercial roasters, it's a little bit harder to control. And it's kind of more of an issue, because commercial roasters really want to dry the beans out quickly. They've just got so much heat and so much airflow in them. This is really controllable, and the hive is designed specifically to retain moisture. Its job is to not dry out the beans and just roast them, because the juice is where the flavor is. That's what we're trying to keep here. 412. We're 13 minutes into it. Basically, I'm just going to run this till it hits 415 and be done with it. I like 415 because I roast a lot of beans to that temperature. And you have to understand, for me, just past 415 and went right to 416. Not only am I a coffee roaster, but I'm also a coffee roaster developer, meaning that I'm constantly trying to make a better roaster. And so I try to keep as many things the same as I can, I'm gonna have to make noise now, and I apologize, guys. I'm gonna weigh this real quick. 127, so I've lost 23 grams. So I'm gonna be right at, this is gonna be a 15.3% weight loss, I believe, right? So it'd be, yeah. And I'm not good at math. I only know that because I wind up with this particular weight after a lot of roasts. So let's do this. Let's look at this coffee. And let me talk about how it smells too. So I can definitely smell this is a natural, like right off the bat. I mean, it's got that smell and it's gonna come through in the cup. Like this cup is definitely, if I brew this coffee, it's definitely gonna be a natural flavor. Now, natural coffees, some people really like natural coffees. I like natural coffees. Some people absolutely abhor them. And part of it is just because it's strong. It can be really strong. And a lot of times people want like, you know, a chocolatey or a nutty flavor in their coffee. They're not looking for that fruit flavor. And when they get it, they don't really like it. And the thing to really consider is that like an Ethiopian or a Kenyan is going to have a fruit flavor, but it's coming from somewhere else. It's not coming from the process. It's coming from inside the bean. But anyway, so if I wanted to get rid of the natural flavor that this has, like maybe I just wasn't into it. I think it's gross and I don't like it. And I've got the beans and I'm going to do it anyways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roast this stuff faster early in the roast, and I'm going to try to burn away that sugar. That's going to be my tactic to get rid of the natural if I don't like it. I've done a pretty good job exploiting it in this roast. Now, when I look at these beans, however, one of the things I'm noticing is that the chaff is almost completely gone. And I like to use that as an indicator of like how much I've heated the coffee, like how hot has it gotten. If the roast has gotten very, very hot, you're gonna have like no chaff left over. If you've kept the roast pretty low, you're gonna have a lot of chaff at the end of it, like stuck in the corner of the bean. You guys have all seen that. You open a bag and inside the little, there's that little strip in there. The naturals, and I'm assuming, and this is a big assumption on my part, that the natural process breaks down the chaff a little bit so that when you roast it, it burns away easier, because I almost never see it on a natural. So let's look at this coffee here real quick. Good looking roast. I have no problem with this. But we're not going to know until we drink it. I mean, that's really the bottom line. And again, I know that this is going to be a traditional natural flavored coffee, and that works for me. For me, I'm actually like if I have an afternoon cup, I want to have a natural, or I want to have an Ethiopian or a Kenyan. If I'm going to have a morning cup, which I am going to have, I'm going to want to have like a real dark, warm brown flavor, and that's just me. So anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on how to approach this particular batch of coffee. So anyways, thanks for joining me. I hope that it wasn't too distracting doing both these things at the same time. I'm just trying to maximize my time. And here's what the roast looks like after it's fully cooled. This is actually the following day. And we're going to go ahead and drink some of this coffee. Yeah, this definitely smells like a natural coffee. All right, we're going to give it a shot. That's definitely a natural. So because the roast was so long and we had such a full development period, there's almost no acidity to it whatsoever. Super, super smooth. And the natural flavor we're talking about, it's kind of like, how to describe it? This is kind of spicy too. It's got that pepperiness that I get from Colombian coffees, and I think that it's just that it's fresh. I mean, I just roasted this yesterday afternoon. It's this morning, the next day. Man, I like this. I'd even go with this as a morning coffee. I mean, it is morning, but you know what I was saying yesterday about how I like a chocolatey coffee. You know, like usually something from the Americas in the morning, and then I like a fruity coffee in the afternoon. This kind of hits them both. Yeah, I like this coffee. This is good. So the question is, would I roast it differently again? I might. What I would probably do is I would shorten up the roast period between the pop and end of dry. The idea being that I don't want to burn off the sugar because I kind of like it in this coffee, but I also would like to get a little bit more acidity. This is just really, really smooth. And sometimes if coffees are too smooth, they can almost seem bland. And that's why I like that little acidic bite. I love the acidity in coffee, and so to me, it's a good thing. I like, and I like bitter flavors. Like I like, bitter beer. I like that type of flavor, and so I would definitely want to get a little bit more acid out of it. So I would shorten that period up a little bit. But overall, I mean, this is really, really good. I would be quite happy if I just did, 3 roasts of this in a row. I've got 2 more to do. Anyways, thanks for joining us. Bye.